the Death Egg Mark II wasted on boss fight. And then there's Frog Forest, and holy shit, what a disappointment. Boring is the best way to describe this level, and I was really looking forward to it too. This is the biggest example of automation in the entire game. In fact, I'm pretty sure a good 90% of the level, you're not even playing it. And that's a problem because, again, the scripted sequences aren't having Sonic go fast. He's just running forwards at a moderate pace, automatically hitting dash pads. It's not exciting if Sonic isn't really going fast, like in the Boost games where you can actually go fast of your own free will by holding down a button. But it's just so boring, this level. I couldn't get to the goal ring fast enough. The only interesting thing about this level is this was actually a really exciting part, and I had to play it twice, was jumping on platforms and avoiding spike balls that are spinning around. And they're occupying the entirety of these platforms, which is cheap, but it's a really entertaining challenge. You don't want to get knocked off the platforms to your death. And of course you can skip that if you fly, but for the love of God, don't fly in this level, because the platforming, as basic as it is, because it's just landing on platforms, is the only interactivity you're going to have with this level. That, and at the very end, the curving speed section where you're jumping over spike balls in your way. And normally I complain about that because those shouldn't be in the speed section, making it impossible to go fast, but again, one, this is an adventure style game, so you can't really go fast as much as you would want to. And two, it's the only form of interactivity this level has. I just don't understand. This is the biggest shining example of why I like Heroes better, because there's so much more to do in the levels themselves than just basic jumping. Because there's just so much. Like, you can stomp through glass to progress. You can punch panels that launch you forwards. You can fly anytime you want to, but it's limited, so you can't just fly over the whole level and skip all of the gameplay. And like, you can grab onto levers and pull or push them. I wish it was more intuitive knowing when you had to do either, but at the very least, there's more to do in Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes' version of this level is infinitely better in every way, even when you conclude the fact that it controls slightly worse. What's worse is that some of these scripted sequences, you can die in them. Like, you can glitch out and die in them. Like, you can get flung off the edge. I've gotten flung off the edge a lot in this level. In fact, the crazy thing is, I've probably gotten flung off the edge and died in this level more than the entirety of Heroes combined. Despite this game not having slippery controls. I just don't understand what went wrong, because I think I really want to count every single mandatory dash pad and spring in the entirety of the adventure games.
Yes.
Well, it's going to be harder for 06 because I haven't played that game, so I'd have to scour through speedrunning footage. And speedruns just show off glitches, so they wouldn't be playing the level in the mandatory way anyways. So it might be harder than I think, but it would be the perfect way to prove my point that the adventure games, not just this game, in general have very scripted, automated level design, rather than actually letting you build up speed naturally by spin dashing on top of slopes most of the time. And if they did that, then I'd understand why they're compared to Boost games and said to be better because you're more in control of your character. But you're clearly not. I spent 90% of this level just watching Sonic go without me being able to spin dash, even when I was on the top of slopes and wanted to spin dash. But Heroes doesn't really have that problem. There are a few speed sections that are automatic, like you're just going ahead, like loop-de-loops basically. But that's about it. For the most part, it's a platformer. And honestly, since the adventure games aren't fast compared to the Boost games, that's the one aspect in which they definitely age badly. I'd rather have much more platforming in an adventure game then. Fang sucks. Or at least he isn't pleasing to me anyways. He can't homie attack, even though he can double jump, when the game's already established that a double jump means that you can homie attack. he can only attack by shooting his gun, and that only happens straight ahead of him, and by using very short-range melee attacks as usual. Well, it's good to be able to play as him, I guess. Speaking of double jumps, I actually discovered that apparently, if you're really lucky, you can double jump in this game as Sonic. Seriously, that's another reason that the physics or whatever in this game are good, because, well, the adventure games certainly wouldn't have given you that extra chance. And at one point in the level, I got trapped in a useless hole. Useless because in Heroes, it would have had something valuable like a key to special stage, or at the very least some item boxes. But here, I just kind of, and again, trapped. You need a flying type to fly out of there. So that's great design. Diamond Dust Zone. How did I manage to beat this? Okay, so I got the glitch where you can't go into Flicky no matter what, but I still managed to beat the level. Well, that's confusing. This level forces you to hit not just one switch, but a billion different switches in order to unlock the goal ring. It's not good enough that you have to collect the Flickies. You also have to get the switches. So if that's what I have to do for Rusty Ruin, is climb through every inch of it looking for 10 million switches to activate the goal ring, because they didn't think that, you know, Sonic 3D Blast doesn't force you to do that. This glitch is confusing, because you'd think that you have to get all the Flickies and then that instantly ends the mission. Like if you get all the if you get 200 rings, because this game has 200 ring missions instead of 100 rings for some reason, that you instantly end the mission because you have them all. Anyways, this level has generally the same problems as Rusty Ruin. At the very least, it looks and sounds great. I like the music, and it looks beautiful. But the problem is that it's not every enemy that has a Flicky, so you try to defeat them all because you don't know which ones have them. And like, you can see here that there are arrows in the distance that go over Flickies in the distance, but it's like only now do the arrows show up. If the arrows were there the whole time, then they would serve as an actually functional version of the treasure hunting radar, telling you where to go. Although, I guess if it was too useful of a radar, then it would defeat the purpose, defeat the challenge, but it's not a fun challenge to begin with, so. But yeah, the polar bears suddenly are an enemy taking 3 hits to kill, but at the very least they look bulky enough to merit that. And the absence of a health bar appearing over them makes it feel less obnoxious and out of place for a Sonic. This is the biggest problem with this level that makes it annoying to play even in the treasure hunting level. Even when you're flying, you still get slowed down by the snow. So you have to constantly try to spin dash jump to fly with any sort of momentum. And even then, that only sometimes works for the snow. It's like the snow roots of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. And the ice physics are crap. You'll end up being stuck. I'm stuck moving forwards even though I'm holding backwards on the control stick. I know that ice is supposed to be slippery, but this goes beyond slippery into just flat out bad. I don't think it's realistic to walk on ice like this. And if the whole point of making ice slippery is to be realistic, then yeah. The level design being so mountainous and full of pits basically requires a flying type or character who can glide, even though these characters suck at the combat these levels force on you, because they don't have a homing attack. So you need a speed type partner and your keyboard in front of you all times to switch to him to have a fun time with the combat. I didn't bother and just had Nicole there because I didn't realize I was even going to be able to beat this level. Like, I clearly have all the Flickies, but the gold ring doesn't show up. Only now does it show up after I've hit all the switches, and there's no indication of which switches. There's no indication of how many switches I need to hit. There's no switch counter on the corner of the screen that goes up when I hit a switch, and all the switches look exactly the same. In fact, like this level in general is kind of samey looking, so it's easy to get lost and not realize where you haven't been. Same goes for Rusty Ruin. And also, it looks like the level's music restarting at the fading out is not just for Seaside Hill, because 2 minutes in, this one does too. But that's a nitpick compared to how tedious this level is with the snow and the ice screwing up your controls, even when you're flying, which is absolutely ridiculous. But at the very least, I was able to beat this level after I managed to find all the switches. That shouldn't have even been considered as a concept. Night Carnival, oh man, I wanted to play that as a level. Sand Ocean. Now normally this game doesn't have any major glitches, but this was a level that I at first thought I couldn't even play. Because if you're playing this as anything other than a mech character, and there's a grand total of 2 in the game for what I've seen so far, your controls will lock up early on in the level and you won't be able to beat it. At the very least, you'll be able to pause the game. I honestly didn't know what it was trying to tell me. How am I supposed to know that I can only beat this level with a mech character? If that's what they wanted, they shouldn't have let you go into this without the mech character. And I got so close to beating it without it too. This level seems to have been made by someone who was offended by the accusations that SC2's mech levels constantly threw enemies at you and had you slamming into them all the time, and they'd fall out of the sky and would have too many of them at once swarming you. The person who made this seems to have taken offense by that and taken it as a challenge and go, "You think this is cheap? I'll show you cheap," because this level takes it up to 11. In fact, this level, with its enemy placement and stuff, is practically a parody of the mech levels of SC2. You'll constantly be blindsided by enemies, blindly running into them or falling into enemies before you can react to them, or their missiles will constantly hit you. Like, there's so many enemies always swarming you, and there's too many of them in one place. And even without that problem, the hover forcing you to always move forwards for some reason makes it precise platforming that used to be fun and enjoyable impossible, to the point where you'll spin dash jump and hover to avoid them. I really love that I can do that, by the way. It's fun being able to spin dash jump to take shortcuts and have the hover on top of that. That is one genuinely fun part of this level. And I didn't feel as annoyed by the slow walking speed of the mech as I did with Prison Lane. At the very least, like, I guess it's because this level is more platformy, so it doesn't make you want to go fast. But yeah, this level is poorly designed. At one point I walked off the edge of my desk trying to land on a mandatory spring that a fourth wall breaking down arrow was directing me towards. There really should have been a wall there preventing me from dying. You will die a lot here. And you also get hit a lot here, which is why the wall that only goes away with a certain amount of rings is so annoying. You really expect me to have 30 rings by this point? Now, normally I don't approve of the life bar in the mech levels, but you're gonna wish that you had a life bar here, because you're constantly gonna end up with no rings, desperately looking for more of them, completely vulnerable, while you're being ganged up on by projectile shooting robots. And it's safer to fight them with rings, but there isn't enough of it in this level. At least with the life bar, you could take hits, even if getting a low life bar was a lot more dangerous. And even if them feeling the need to give you a life bar in the first place was putting a band-aid over the problem of having too many enemies swarming you at once. And again, it's hard to tell from afar if the laser gates are gone, because the gates themselves are also red, so you can easily slam into them before you even realize it. Why is there forced combat in a level like this when even the original level didn't have any forced combat? Like I said, this is practically a parody of the SC2 mech levels, because this is a mech level that actually didn't force you to fight to progress. How was I supposed to know that I suddenly had to do that? I also missed a checkpoint at one point and was sent back a lot because of a death, so that only goes to prove that checkpoints, especially in 3D, should be automatically triggered. Even the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed did that, and for good reason. When you miss a checkpoint, because it flings you right over one, that's gonna inconvenience you. Tropical Resort. I love this level so much. It's full of downward slopes without any dash pads to let you actually earn your speed. You feel so much faster spin dashing down slopes for extended speed sections than you do watching Sonic hit dash pads in scripted sequences. Frog Forest, take note. This is how the levels in this game should be designed. It's not perfect though. It is possible to get flung off the edge of the sides of the winding blue speed sections, especially at the beginning, because they don't have any walls to protect you, so you gotta drift correctly. And the lack of the wisps, although they can't help that I guess, but the lack of the wisps means that the level has less to do in it other than just run forwards and occasionally go platforming. The level feels kind of empty because of that. Although, I'm not sure how they could get the drill to work in 3D. I mean, I'm sure they could manage it. There's nothing fans can't do. And one slope goes way too high upwards, forcing you to awkwardly jump and fly up it the best you can. Because even if you build up momentum properly before it, you'll never make it up there naturally. So they really shouldn't have designed it like that. The level isn't perfect, but I don't really care. This level is so much more fast and exciting than the original version of it in Sonic Colors. And it's even better playing it as Bean. It's so much fun to play, mainly because of just how high up his double jump goes. So unlike with Blaze, it actually lets you use it reliably to skip platforming instead of falling to your death because you overestimate how high you're going to jump with it. Granted, he can barely attack. He just has a dinky little bomb that I think it only hurts the enemy if it actually somehow hits it, and has a very tiny explosion, if at all. It makes the dummy ring bombs look effective. But that doesn't really matter when you can usually just avoid the enemies by double jumping anyways, and switch to a speed type to homing attack them if you know better, and actually keep it with you the whole time anyways. Although it is a little tricky to land precisely on tiny platforms with a double jump because the camera doesn't show you much of what's below you, and your lack of a drop shadow, which is completely inexcusable, it works great for skipping platforms nevertheless. Oh yeah, I finally noticed in this level that you can descend with the hang glider by holding X, or whatever the controls prompt for the keyboard says is X, which I think is B for the Xbox controller. I'd still rather control it freely with the control stick though. I don't know why you can't just hold down on the control stick and go down with the hang glider. I mean, I kind of understand being restricted to moving left and right for a hang glider in like Sonic Rush and Altitude Limits, but for a 3D Sonic game, it feels really stiff and awkward controlling it like this. But yeah, this is a great level. This is a pleasant surprise after all the levels recently before it. Occasionally the level does lose its sense of direction though. The first time was my fault. I obviously was supposed to follow the winding blue road and not jump over to the castle straight ahead of it, but it was straight ahead of me. The second time was far more annoying. The level was naturally leading you ahead, but apparently you were actually supposed to backtrack to hit springs to progress. Springs that were off to the side, on the sides of the narrow area you're walking down. And if you keep going ahead, although I really shouldn't have jumped down the pit that when they're blatantly telling me it was a bottomless pit, but I guess I just assumed that there were platforms to catch me there. This level isn't perfect. It definitely still feels like janky, like there's obviously some problems with it, but that's the power of downward slopes. That's the power of letting you earn your speed and have the level be actually fast for most of it. Even if the level has significant problems, it still feels really fun most of the time. Especially when you're playing as Bean. I swear, it's like this level is designed for him. Although, I don't understand why they put forced combat in this level. At the very least, it's usually not a huge presence. Just don't play the balloon mission. The balloon mission is exactly as unplayable as I imagine it to be. In fact, it's worse because they actually make it impossible to beat by hiding a balloon in a cage that requires 150 rings to open. You are not going to have 150 rings by the time you reach this section. And even if you try to precisely navigate yourself into every line of rings, then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're so far into level that you hit a loop-de-loop, and trying to go backwards through that loop-de-loop glitches things up and sends you into the bottomless pit. And it's after a checkpoint, too. So eventually you're going to reach a point where you can't backtrack to that cage, even if you manage to get 150 rings after reaching it. I'm sure you could fly around the loop-de-loop, I guess, but it would still be a pain in the ass backtracking all the way to that cage. Obviously, the person who put that balloon there is an idiot. Even if you do go through the tedious process of homing attacking every single balloon in this level, whoever thought it was a good idea to make 179 balloons in a mission is an idiot. I don't really like Shard's voice clips, honestly. They sound echoey and like scary, even though he's supposed to be a friendly robot. I like how it sounds kind of like Sonic, because that's the point. He is Sonic. Metal Sonic anyways. But it doesn't sound like I'd imagine him to sound. It sounds too evil, I don't know. And Bark the Polar Bear is awful. He's a power type, which means he's restricted to fighting with extremely short-range attacks. And he can't glide, but pressing A when you're jumping can cause him to lunge forwards uncontrollably in a stiff manner that can probably fling you to your death. That was a bad idea. Obviously, I didn't really bother beating this mission. I tried though. Look at the 9 minutes on the time limit. I was just that bored, I guess. I do like how you can mash the A button to homing attack all of the lines of balloons in a row. That's how reliable the homing attack is. You don't have to worry about having to individually jump into every single one, or throw projectiles at every single one, unless you're stupid enough to come to this mission without a homing attack character. But yeah, at the very least, they could have had the decency to put a shield and a whole bunch of ring boxes next to the 150 rings cage. Because they really... This is obviously one of those missions that it's almost as if it was made to intentionally be bad. The entire fun of this level was being able to go fast, but you can't go fast when you have to stop and homing attack every single balloon. So you might miss one, and if you miss one, which is very easy to do, especially since this level is so colorful, and that it's distracting, like, it's just Team Chaotix up to 11.